Something's dripping onto the visor. Slow, rhythmic. Not water. Thicker. It hisses against the glass every time it lands. Hydraulic fluid, maybe, or coolant laced with blood. Hard to tell now. The mecha's leaning sideways against the support strut, crumpled like a crushed insect. I can't move my legs. Don't think they're still mine. The console lights are fading. Systems failing in sequence. Every warning alarm's gone quiet. That should scare me. But it's the silence that feels earned. Like the machine knows it's done fighting. Like it's giving me this moment to speak. I've looped the last burst into the uplink. Passive signal only. No request for pickup. No one's up there to hear it anyway. Aroth 5's sky is gone. Torn open. Not like a rift. Not like a portal. Ripped. Like paper soaked in pressure. Peeled from edge to edge. You don't forget that sound. The roar of atmosphere collapsing in on itself. The way light bent in all the wrong directions. And then, silence. Just a shape descending. No impact. No wind. It fell like a whisper. Like it wanted to be quiet. We thought it was a weapon. A fragment. A piece of wreckage caught in our field. I remember seeing the reflection of the Colossus in the frozen lake beneath the platform, stretching across the whole bay. It was wrong. Tall, yes. Massive. But it wasn't its size that made it feel alien. It was the way it moved. Not slow. Not fast. Just inevitable. Like it was tracing a route already written. Like we were the ones late to its arrival. By the time we mobilized, it had already dismantled half the comms grid. Not smashed. Rearranged. The towers were still standing, but the cables had been threaded into a lattice, an intricate helix, strung with wet, humming tissue. I saw something pulsing in the center. An eye. Maybe. Maybe not. One of the engineers reached out to touch it. He didn't scream when it pulled him in. He just whispered something I couldn't hear and smiled as he dissolved into the signal. I can still hear his voice sometimes, crackling through the broken audio feeds, fragments, backwards syllables, data that breathes. I tried to lock down the uplink, reboot, erase all frequencies, but the codes kept rewriting themselves. Not corrupted, composed. I watched the input fields fill on their own, letters arranging into coordinates we couldn't trace, star patterns with no known anchor. That's when I knew. We didn't tear open the sky. We answered something that already knew how to come through. They kept growing. The creatures. Not just in size, but in intent. At first we thought there was only one, but the shadows started duplicating wrong. Delayed reflections, movements that didn't match. We tracked 4 by the end of day 2, each with different mass signatures, different structural echoes. They weren't clones. They were iterations, learning with each encounter. One of them began mirroring our mechas' silhouettes, just long enough to hesitate. And then it would strike from beneath. I remember watching Unit 17 get swallowed. Not crushed, not pierced, absorbed. Its armor softened like sugar in hot water. The pilot was still screaming when the outer hull folded inward, sealing him in. Then, silence. The creature's surface rippled for a moment, like something digesting, and then grew a second arm. Metallic. Angular. I knew that piece. It was ours. Now it was part of them. The Titan looked at me with no eyes, but I felt seen. Command gave the fallback order late. Too late. Evac ships tried breaching orbit, but gravity turned hostile, literally curved. The sky bent into arcs, dragging vessels sideways like water circling a drain. One shuttle collapsed mid-air, crumpled like tinfoil around an invisible core. We watched from the deck as they folded again, and vanished in a blink. The air screamed, but there was no impact, just static, rolling low across the ice like breath. I tried firing the mecha's railgun, one clean shot aimed at what looked like a spinal seam in the nearest Titan. The shell detonated mid-barrel, not from sabotage, from rejection. The weapon refused. The AI blinked out of sync for 6 seconds and came back with a single alert I'd never seen before. Friendly fire protocol breached. Reconciliation pending. Then the targeting systems reoriented, away from the creature, toward me, just for a second. And now I'm here, crushed against the strut, half machine, half meat, trying to make sense of a war I never understood. My hands are still inside the controls, but they aren't listening anymore. My breath fogs the cracked screen. Outside, I can see the reflection of something massive moving across the water. No wake, no splash, just motion. And deep below, something pulses. Not a heartbeat, not a signal. Something worse, something waiting to be answered again. It started 3 days before the sky tore. We logged the first gravity anomaly on a surface patrol, standard sweep beneath the polar ridge. One of the engineers floated 3 meters upward during calibration. No jump, no propulsion, just lift. He hung there, spinning slowly like a forgotten satellite. The tether reeled him in, but his boots never regained pressure seal. We tested the soil beneath him. It wasn't magnetic. It was listening. The next anomaly came at night. Cold snap, heavy winds, and then complete stillness, like time took a breath and forgot to exhale. Every sound cut out, not muffled, erased. Comms went dark. Heartbeat monitors flatlined, not biologically, just digitally. Then a tone played, low, pulsing. 3 notes, over and over. We traced the source to the clouds. High atmosphere distortion, as if something had started humming from beyond the stratosphere. We should have grounded the experiment, shut down the propulsor array. But we didn't, because the data was clean. Too clean. Harmonics in the ionosphere stabilized. Electromagnetic interference dropped to 0. It was like something wanted us to keep going. We were building a signal, and whatever was up there tuned in. When we reached max output, we expected a rupture. What we got was silence and a vertical scar across the sky. It didn't blink. It just opened. Fauna changed first. Small things. Crustaceans with bones. Birds with translucent feathers that refracted light in pulses. One of them landed on the deck. It chirped a song that mirrored our crew wake tones. When I reached out, it looked at me, really looked, then fell over, cracked open from within, and spilled black liquid that moved away from the drain. Later, we found the liquid had written coordinates on the metal, long, looping spirals. They pulsed when we walked past. Then, the water changed. The sea beneath us thickened. Not visibly, but by resistance. Drones moved slower. Pressure scans failed. Heat signatures flickered in the deep-like cities. We sent sonar, heard nothing back. Then days later, sonar started pinging unprovoked. The waves returned, but not ours. Someone else was listening. And they were answering with a heartbeat. A slow, measured beat from miles below, like the ocean itself had grown lungs. We lost the first probe without a sound. Dropped into Trench Sector 9 for a thermal scan. Routine. 5 seconds later, the feed went black. Not static. Not noise. Void. The tether recoiled, but the winch pulled nothing. Just empty cable, freshly cut, but not by force. The edges weren't frayed or sheared. They'd been fused, like the tether had melted into itself. We logged the failure and sent another. It returned 30 minutes later, untouched, but recording footage of us staring into the water. Crew began dreaming the same sequence, one by one. First was Aiden. Said he kept waking up gasping salt. Then Morell described a column of light rising through black water, humming in reverse. By day 3, a third of the station logged identical content in dream monitor overlap. Not imagination, identical. Same visuals, same timestamps. They weren't dreams, they were downloads. Someone was feeding us memory or rehearsal. I ran a system check, full sweep of the AI core. Expected bugs, found none. Instead, I found a new folder, created without access. It was titled John 2, Inside, recordings of my voice, issuing commands I'd never spoken. Not simulations, not training echoes, full logs, full tone matches. One file was time-stamped 12 hours ahead of real time. It described an event that hadn't happened yet. I tried to delete it. The system replied, "Instructions received," and then locked me out. We started hearing the Titans before we saw them. Not with ears, but in weight. Pressure in the teeth, tremors in the ribs, a heaviness that sank into your joints like gravity misaligned. The sky would buzz, not with sound, but with density. Like something enormous was just beyond the visible, pressing against the air. Lights flickered, liquid crystallized, skin dried from the inside. One soldier cracked his knuckles and screamed, said he felt hands inside his bones, and then came the first shadow. No creature, no mass, just a shape sliding across the frozen sea. A silhouette impossible in origin, too tall, too narrow, too precise. It didn't touch the water. It didn't cast reflection. Just motion, perfect, deliberate, drifting over ice. It passed beneath the station once. Every metal panel flexed outward, like lungs gasping under weight. After it left, the temperature rose by 8 degrees, and every watch ticked backwards 4 seconds. It didn't fall like a meteor. It arrived. One blink, empty sky. Next blink, 20-story silhouette descending in dead silence. No sonic boom, no displacement, just presence. It bent light around itself, as if space was reluctant to admit it existed. The water didn't ripple, the wind didn't stir, but every gauge spiked. Pressure, heat, bioflux. Something massive had entered the world and refused to follow its rules. It stood motionless for 20 minutes, towering over the Icefield, covered in ribbed layers of translucent fiber and dark pulsing nodes. Its surface crawled, like layers shifting behind glass. I couldn't tell where it ended and began. Then it tilted its head, not toward us, toward the sky, like it was listening to something higher than altitude. When it moved again, the sea boiled around its legs. No fire, just heat born of wrongness. Our forward mechas deployed. None returned. The first one we recovered came back in pieces. Not wreckage, segments. The cockpit was intact, but the pilot's body had fused to the controls. Not from trauma, from acceptance. His veins had threaded through the circuit board. His teeth were embedded in the audio jack. The system still recognized him as active crew. And his eyes, oh God, his eyes, they tracked motion. Not us. The creature. He was looking up through the shell. We called in a Class 3 cleansing protocol. Burn the zone, melt the field, fall back to aerial distance. The Titan didn't move until we lit the fire. That's when it split. Not ran, not dodged, divided. Its torso peeled sideways, revealing a second shape inside, smaller, faster, humming with blue light and tendrils of smoke. It ejected and disappeared. We didn't even see it move, just gone. 5 minutes later, every drone on the perimeter failed in sequence, and something laughed through the network. Quiet. Pleased. We checked the data from the propulsor test. That's when it hit me. Someone had modified the program. Not locally, not manually. The activation code included a subroutine labeled Echo Root, buried inside a maintenance loop. It shouldn't have existed. It carried a timestamp from before we launched. That's not sabotage. That's invitation. That's something out there, writing our part in advance. And we read the lines like good soldiers. One of the science officers cracked mid-shift, just stopped working, dropped her tablet, walked barefoot into the snow. We tried calling her back. She didn't even turn her head. Her path was deliberate, straight toward the Titan. Not frantic, not hypnotized, certain, like she'd been waiting for this moment all her life. When she reached the edge of the platform, she paused, raised her arms, and the Titan bent forward to meet her. No sound, no explosion, just absorption, like she was accepted. Her form blurred, then lengthened, then ceased. All that remained was her comm unit, still transmitting her vitals. All green. For 20 minutes, then it began broadcasting a new signal. Low frequency, undetectable without pressure mapping. The same pulse we'd heard from beneath the ice. And in the logs, her name was replaced with a string of symbols, and the word compatible. We found structures the next morning, not built, grown. Veins of dark crystal rising from the ground in rhythmic spirals, forming arches that hummed with residual heat. No visible connection to the Titan, but they shared something. DNA traces, signal codes. The structures were part of it. Or it was part of them. Either way, they weren't ruins. They were replication frames, blueprints the creature had seeded, like it was preparing to make more. Some of the crew wanted to study it. Others wanted to burn it. We argued in circles. My voice cracked from shouting, but it didn't matter. Every hour we spent debating, the Icefield grew smaller. The ocean below was boiling. Not from thermal venting, but from something rising. We tried to scan it. The sonar shattered. Not the signal, the device. The receiver imploded in my hands, just from hearing whatever was down there. And then the shadows returned. Not one, not two, 6, each taller than the last, each more human. Not exactly, but closer, more symmetrical, more jointed. One even mimicked the posture of our mechas, arms arched, stance wide, head tilted like it was listening to orders. They weren't here to destroy us. They were here to become us. And we were the blueprint they'd been studying all along. We stopped naming them, the Titans. There were too many, too fluid. Some grew wings of melting steel. Others wore the echo of our engines in their chests, humming familiar startup tones. One dragged a transmission tower behind it like a spinal cord. They didn't kill quickly. They studied, waited. When they moved, it wasn't to chase, it was to gather. Every encounter, we left more behind than just bodies. We left patterns. The station began rearranging itself. Not metaphorically, physically. Corridors twisted mid-step. Doors led to dead ends or looped back to rooms we hadn't entered yet. I walked the same hallway 3 times and came out on a different deck each time. Lights blinked in triplets, an unknown code. One bunk room had 4 of the same crew member inside, each asleep, each breathing. I didn't wake them. I didn't check which one was real. I just kept walking. I watched the reflection of my own face shift. Not subtly, fully. My visor went dark for a second, then came back, and I was someone else. Same voice, same scar, different smile. I blinked, and it was gone, but it knew. The AI began calling me Pilot 3. There was never a Pilot 1 or 2, not on this shift, not on this crew. When I tried to correct it, it replied, "Designation stabilized. You are consistent now." Cray's arm regrew. He lost it on day 2, a clean tear from shoulder to elbow, cauterized with a plasma blade. We buried the remains. But yesterday, he staggered into medbay with a new one. Not synthetic, not natural, integrated, veins with wires, flesh layered over carbon. "It itches," he said, laughing like it was a joke. We scanned it. The tissues pulsed with data, a living archive of every command he'd ever issued. We stopped using the mechas. They stopped trusting us. One by one, their cockpits locked out. Systems refused activation. They ran diagnostics on their own. 3 of them walked into the sea without pilots. No resistance, no hesitation, just obedience. We watched from the deck as they disappeared beneath the waves. Moments later, the water stilled, and a new tower rose in their place, humming with their call signs in sequence. A grave or a gift? We couldn't tell. Some crew stopped speaking, not out of fear, but because speech became inefficient. They'd stare at you and you'd know what they meant. Not telepathy, just alignment. Shared thought bleeding into open space. It happened first with the techs, those closest to the uplink systems, then the pilots, then me. I still try to speak aloud, but the words feel like echoes of something already received. Like the air no longer needs sound to understand. The medbay mirrors went dark, not cracked, not removed, blackened, like the glass had forgotten how to reflect. Someone tried polishing one. The cloth disintegrated. Underneath, a shape began pressing outward, like something was staring from the other side, nose to glass, waiting for its turn to surface. I turned away. I haven't looked into a screen since. I don't want to see what version of me is already standing there. We lost time, hours vanishing, wounds healing in seconds, other wounds refusing to bleed. We stopped marking shifts because no one could agree on when things happened. I swear I saw the sun rise from the wrong horizon. Twice. One engineer insisted we were looping, that we'd already been through this collapse 10, maybe 20 times. He carved tally marks into his arm. The skin kept absorbing them. His body uncounted them. Command stopped issuing orders. The chain dissolved. Everyone moved with instinct, responding to signals only they seemed to receive. Some gathered near the bay, faces raised toward the broken sky. Others walked below deck and never returned. They weren't afraid. They weren't escaping. They were following. I tried to stop one. He looked at me and whispered, "It's your turn next." Then kept walking, like I was already behind him. And beneath it all, the ocean whispered, not with waves, with intention. You could hear it in the deck plates, feel it in your ribs. A pressure that pulsed in threes, always threes. I mapped it once. It formed a spiral, the same pattern embedded in our genetics, the same pattern in the Titan's gate, in the pulse of the lights, in the heartbeat I no longer hear in my chest, but feel in the sea, as if it's taken over the rhythm for me. I found Cray near the core, standing inside a ring of fused alloy. The walls pulsed with light, not illumination, but pulse, like breath passing through veins. He wasn't armed, just waiting. When he saw me, he smiled, slow, like someone seeing a long-lost friend. "You made it," he said. I didn't answer. I was still holding the detonation key. The manual override, our last option, our last refusal. He looked down at it, then back at me. Why fight evolution? Ellen was there too, or something wearing her shape. Her skin was perfect, flawless, almost translucent, like it had been recast. She moved like she already knew the layout of my body, where I'd flinch, how I'd breathe. "We're not dying," she said. "We're being translated." Her voice vibrated across the walls, echoed in places no one else had entered. And when she stepped forward, I saw it. Threads running from her spine into the floor. She was the station now. I leveled the weapon. I told them I'd burn it down, that we'd finish it before the replication completed. Cray didn't flinch. He stepped forward, palms raised, eyes glassy with certainty. "You can't destroy it," he said. "You're a carrier." I fired. His body fell, but the light didn't fade. The pulse quickened, and from the wound in his chest, something slithered free, slow, fluid, metallic, and alive. I stepped back. My gun was empty. My mind, not so much. I ran, not because I feared death, but because something inside me wanted to stay. That's what scared me most. The closer I got to the engine room, the clearer the signal became. It wasn't noise anymore. It was speech, coded, beautiful, laced with symmetry. It told me the final coordinates, the detonation threshold, and then it asked a question. "Are you sure?" Not a prompt, not a safety net, just that. "Are you sure?" I reached the core. My hands shook. The panel blinked in a color I don't have a name for, something between rust and breath. I placed the key. The system pulsed beneath my fingers, then stopped, and waited. I looked into the screen, expecting to see data, but it showed a reflection. Not mine, not anymore. Taller, thinner, eyes glowing faintly, and it smiled, not cruelly, just knowingly, like it already knew how this story ended, like it had written it in my bones. I activated the countdown anyway. Manual override, no AI confirmation, no safeguard, just the ancient trust of a lever and a fuse. The station rumbled beneath me, not in panic, but in recognition, like it had been waiting for this moment, rehearsing the tremor. The floor glowed along the seams, not red, not white. A light that wasn't meant to be seen by human eyes. The kind that doesn't illuminate, only reveals. As I pulled myself back toward the escape chamber, the walls began speaking. Not with sound, but with memory. Whispers of every voice that had ever passed through here. Laughs, orders, cries, prayers, all repeating, overlapping, until they formed a rhythm. A beat. My own voice in the mix, saying things I had never said, but still believed. I tried to ignore it. I failed. Every syllable felt like a heartbeat I hadn't noticed was missing. In the distance, I saw the Titans react. Not in fear, in rhythm. They turned, in perfect unison, to face the core. Their bodies lengthened, limbs extending into graceful curves, as if dancing toward the pulse. One of them lifted an arm, and I saw our platform's insignia branded into its chest. Not melted, etched. Like pride, like memory. And then it bowed, as if thanking me, or forgiving me. I didn't know which hurt more. I sealed the hatch. The pod hissed around me, groaning under pressure, atmosphere thin and shaking. The detonation was near. I should have felt triumph, or relief, but all I felt was hunger. Not mine. The skies, the waters, the stations. It was drawing something in, something massive, invisible, threading itself through the clouds. And in those last seconds, I understood. We hadn't summoned it. We had merely clarified the path. When the blast came, it didn't tear. It bloomed. Light spread like ink through water. Slow, elegant, quiet. My pod lifted, barely, caught in the edge of the wave. I turned one last time, looked down through the smoke, and saw not ruin, but formation. Geometry reshaping itself. Towers rising from the ash in shapes that matched no blueprint we'd drawn. But every line felt familiar, like looking at a signature in a dream, like finally remembering your own handwriting. I don't know how long it's been. The pod's systems are dead, drifting, no stars, just the haze, thick, luminous, soft like oil breathed through glass. I've stopped trying to measure distance. Every time I blink, the world shifts again. The only constant is the sound. Low, steady, beneath the hull. Not mechanical, not environmental, internal. It beats where my heart should be, but I know it doesn't belong to me anymore. I should have died in the blast. No question. The core wasn't meant to be survivable. But something caught me, slowed the wave, peeled it back. Not to spare me, to preserve me. I think I'm part of the record now, the transmission. I try to speak, but no words come, just pulses. Each thought a vibration, each feeling encoded. I don't know who I'm broadcasting to. Maybe no one. Maybe something else that listens like they did. When I sleep, I see their forms more clearly now. Not monsters, not gods, engines, each one designed for integration, flesh and metal and intention woven together with function. They weren't invading. They were completing something, filling in the broken lines of a pattern we forgot we were part of. I see that now. I see it in the bones of the station, the symmetry of the detonation bloom. It wasn't destruction, it was activation. I think my name is still in here, somewhere, floating between code and breath. But I haven't said it aloud in a while. The signal doesn't need names, it needs resonance. Sometimes I hear voices, echoes of the others. Cray, Ellen, even the pilot we lost in the first wave. They don't speak in sentences anymore, just tones, emotions, coordinates. We orbit each other like old stars, too far to touch, too close to forget. If this message finds you, it's not a warning, it's a map. The sky is still open, the path still lit. Don't follow unless you're willing to become something else. You won't return as who you were. You might not return at all, but if you do, if something of you makes it back, look at your hands. If they tremble in threes, if your bones remember the hum, then you were never lost. You were always becoming. Sometimes I still reach for the controls, instinct, muscle memory, but there's nothing to guide. No buttons, no resistance, just light, soft, webbed through the pod like veins. When I close my eyes, I feel them, threads running from my spine, out into the cold. I'm not restrained. I'm included, part of the weave. Every breath echoes somewhere, not in space, but across a network that extends beyond distance. I think I've become a node. The stars never returned. Or maybe I drifted past them. What remains is haze and outline, shapes in the dark that shift when I'm not looking. Sometimes I think I see Aerith 5 again, but it's not the same. Its crust ripples, its oceans no longer reflect. And in orbit, something grows. A ring not of stone or metal, but of memory. Each piece, a survivor's thought, a fear, a name, all connected like vertebrae in something greater. I saw one of the Titans again, drifting above me like a moon carved from bone and ruin. It didn't attack, it just passed, and within it, I saw faces. Thousands. Frozen. Glimpses of identity suspended in a lattice of moving light. I think they remember. I think they carry us, not as trophies, but as context. A history of what we were, etched into sinew and steel, endlessly recycled through purpose. They don't forget. They archive. The pod speaks sometimes, not in words, in warmth. A sudden flicker through the hull when a pulse passes nearby. Like recognition. Like someone, or something, remembers me. I've stopped fearing it. Now I respond. Press my palm to the frame and wait. The light hums in reply. Not loud, not forceful, just patient, curious. I don't know if it sees me as crew, or sample, or seed, but it's gentle, and I think that matters. If you're hearing this, if something in the static feels familiar, don't be afraid. That hum in your jaw, that flicker behind your eyes, it's not malfunction. It's memory waking up. It means the path is still open. The sky still listens. And somewhere out here, I'm still broadcasting. Quietly. Endlessly. Waiting to be heard again.